Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and back to another video. As you saw from the title and the thumbnail, today we're going to be discussing one of the biggest embarrassments on TV, I think, and that is Miss Joy Reid. Yes, she's a host on MSNBC, and she's an idiot, okay? Let's just call it what it is. She's a freaking idiot. And so last week she did an interview with a woman. She's a woman from a group called Moms for Liberty. She's a co-founder. And this woman is on the front lines when it comes to protecting children from inappropriate things happening in schools. And as we know, I've done many videos on this very topic on how the public school systems are completely failing our children because they are filled with liberal leftist ideology and there's no room for anything else. One of the biggest issues with many of these schools is that they are implementing books that are extremely inappropriate for kids in the libraries. I mean, there's no other way around it. It's inappropriate topics that are sexually explicit. And so this woman went on Joy Reid's show to pretty much debate her on this issue and why she stands where she stands. I only saw about 10 seconds of the clip and then I stopped it and I was like, I gotta react to this because my mind is going to explode right now. So this is my first time watching the full video. I'm gonna do it with you guys. We're gonna talk about it, discuss it, break it down, and hopefully not lose our minds. So without further ado, let's get into this reaction video. All right, I'm all queued up. Let's go.
LGBTQ parents and parents of LGBTQ kids, do they have parental rights?
Every parent, Joy. Every parent means every parent has the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children.
And liberal parents, do liberal parents have those rights as well?
All parents, sure.
So let me point you to some statistics, because the question becomes then who gets to decide what all kids get to read? The Washington Post took a look at about 1,000 plus book challenges that were filed, and they found that they were filed nationwide by just 11 people. Each of these people brought 10 or more challenges against books in their school district. Together, these serial filers constituted 6% of all book challengers, but they were responsible for 60% of filings. In Florida, Tampa Bay Times, they found that of roughly 1,100 complaints recorded in Florida since July 2022, we're talking about more than 700 just from two counties, Escambia in the Western Panhandle and Clay County. Together, those are less than 3% of the public school enrollment, 600 of those complaints, 2 people. Why should 13 people get to decide what books tens of thousands of children get to read?
Well, I'm thinking it's probably because those 13 people saw what some of the content was in the books. I mean, explicit, graphic, sexual content. And I'm happy to talk about some of that content if you'd like to.
Well, this is the question again. The books that are being banned, I want to give you just
no books are being banned.
Hold on a second.
Well, no, Joy, but I want to be clear. No one's banning books. Write the book, print the book, publish the book, put the book in the public library, sell the book, right? We're talking about a public school library. Children don't have unfettered access to the internet at school.
Yes.
I did a FOIA records request, and I wanted to see what kinds of internet sites are banned in schools, if we're going to talk about banning, right? And the subject matter in the books that moms are concerned about are the same things that kids don't have access to on the internet. So it just feels very hypocritical, right? No, why is no one out there protesting for, free the internet in schools?
Let me give you
really quickly, because there was lots to unpack just in that 2 minutes. So Joy Reid cracks me up, right? Because she starts the argument with, well, why should 13 people control what everybody else gets to read? Well, first of all, it's not about 13 people. It's about the content of what they're bringing up, right? Like, don't shoot the messenger. Just because it's 13, it doesn't matter if it's 13, if it's 1,300, if it's 13,000. The fact of the matter is the books are inappropriate. And those 13 people were the ones to stand up and say, hey, what's going on here? School system, what are you doing? And the fact that her argument is, it's just 13, what's the big deal? And why should 13 control the rest of the population in the state of Florida when it comes to the kids is such a crazy defense, in my opinion, because she's not actually addressing the topic at hand. She's trying to nitpick how we got there. Forget about how we got there. We're here. Let's talk about what we're talking about, which is the content of these books and why they are inappropriate. End of story. And I love that the woman said, listen, we have restrictions on kids in schools all the time when it comes to a plethora of things, including their internet. So why is it that it's okay to restrict certain sites, right? And we call that restrictions. We don't call that bans. We call it restrictions because they should not have access to certain topics without parental discretion. We know the internet is a cesspool of inappropriate things, and books can also be a cesspool of inappropriate things if they are not looked at, if they're not restricted, if they're not overseen, right? It's a school. It's not a public library, it's a public school library. So we're talking about minors, we're talking about children, we're talking about kids, we're talking about people who have restrictions on so many things outside of school because they're kids. So the fact that Joy Reid is trying to make this argument that why are we banning books? Liberals love to use the term banning, and it's such a false narrative. It really is fake news because, like she said, the books are not being banned. The books are being restricted in schools because we're talking about minors. And these books, by the way, are talking about things that are very inappropriate, which I'm sure she's going to bring up. But we're talking about sexually explicit things, body parts, sexual acts. Like, we're talking about things that are for adult ears and eyes. And if a child is going to be present, it needs to be under the supervision of their parents, not a teacher. Because at the end of the day, a teacher's job is not to parent the child. A teacher's job is to supervise what's happening within that structure. And part of that supervision, yes, is restricting inappropriate books from the libraries. Let's keep watching.
An example of some of the books that have been removed from shelves as a result of the activities of organizations like Moms for Liberty.
We're not going to talk like Moms for Liberty. We're going to talk specifically Moms for Liberty.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy to have this conversation with you, Joy.
Absolutely.
But we're going to be specific about the actions of Moms for Liberty chapters.
Oh, 100%.
Because I can't be possibly responsible for every single parent in America.
But your organization is the lead. You're the leading organization that's doing this. You have chapters all over the country, and other organizations are following your lead. And PEN America has listed, they have posted the list of books that have been removed from shelves as a result of these.
Let's talk about it.
Let me just read you a couple of them. Anne Frank's A Diary of a Young Girl. Mouse, which is a book about the Holocaust, a graphic novel. Genderqueer, a memoir. All Boys Aren't Blue. Beloved, Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington. Ruby Bridges Goes to School. Slaughterhouse-Five, The Color Purple, Forever by Judy Blume. I could go on. These are books that are not only popular, in some cases are classics. Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. Let me give you an example.
Well, I'd like to answer your question.
Please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just mentioned a list of books. And so Moms for Liberty doesn't have like a national book list. There was never a list of books that we put out and said, parents, be concerned about these books, right? We didn't do it because we want our parents to be effective advocates. So when moms are going into the libraries and the schools, when they're seeing what their children have access to, when they go to speak to the superintendent or the principal, they have accurate information, right?
They're where are they getting their information from?
You can just go online to a catalog in your children's library, and you can see what
without
books are
reading the
available.
books. What is book? What is? One moment. What is booklooks.com?
I'm aware of a website called booklooks.com where parents can go and see some of the books that other parents are concerned about.
Booklooks.com has been used in Florida extensively in counties like, I used to live in Broward County. I lived there for 14 years.
Okay.
In counties like Broward, counties like Clay, counties like Escambia, Moms for Liberty activists are using booklooks.com. And it's essentially a Cliff Notes for books.
Yeah.
So you go through without even having to read the book. I'm going to just hold it up so our audience can see what it looks like. This is the one for All Boys Aren't Blue, which is one of the books Moms for Liberty has.
Everyone should go and see the content in this book. That's such a good idea.
And so what happens is you can do keyword searches and find certain keywords.
Like rape.
You can find sure.
Or anal rape or dildo.
You can find all sorts
those types
of keywords.
of words. But like
wait, hold on, wait. Let me finish my question. Then
great,
you can answer.
sure.
I'm going to give you time to answer, but I got to ask you first.
Oh, yeah, I got the question.
And so what you find is the keywords that you find, the N-word, anything, words like you just used, you'll get out of context passages from the book. And then based on that, Moms for Liberty members are going to places like Broward County school board meetings, reading out of context passages from these books, and then demanding.
Okay, I gotta stop her. Just for a second, I gotta stop her because, again, a lot to unpack just in that clip of 2 more minutes. So she brings up a list of some of the books that are being restricted, not banned, restricted in some of these school districts, depending on the age of the students. I like how she doesn't mention that, right? She just says bans, schools, generalizes it. But we're talking about certain grades and certain ages within these districts. That matters because that is bringing context to the conversation of everything that she is arguing for right now when it comes to these books, yet she's not bringing forth in this conversation. She's purposefully generalizing it and making it seem as though it's a book ban when it's not. It's a book restriction on certain children of certain ages. Let's address that first, right? But she mentioned a book that I'm glad she actually mentioned called Gender Queer. Now, before I even get into the rest of this video, let's go online and do a quick search of Gender Queer. Let's do that. So we can actually see the context of this book, or at least some of the context of this book, because I'm familiar with this book. Actually, I've done a video on this book. And Gender Queer, by the way, is a book that is addressing gender identity issues, gender ideology, transgenderism, things of that nature. Okay, that's what that book is primarily addressing and going into. But within the book, let's look at some of the things that this book has as far as content. So first things first, the context of this book is about a woman by the name of Maya, who is really telling her story of self-discovery, realizing as she was growing up that she doesn't want to be a girl. She feels like she's asexual, she doesn't really have a gender, she's non-binary, wants to be a boy, goes through all of these different experiences and addresses each experience within the book. So that's the context for you to understand what this book is about. Now I'm going to get into some of the imagery of this book, and this is graphic, so just FYI, but I feel like we got to talk about it because there's a reason why this book has been banned in most schools, and we need the full context to understand the why. So in this portion of the book, you can see that she's speaking with a friend and they're talking about getting tattoos, and then suddenly the conversation goes from tattoos to the correlation of getting top surgery, removing her breast from her body. And you see how the conversation just leads itself into having a mastectomy from a tattoo, as if the two coincide with one another. It completely minimizes body mutilation. That's what we're talking about here, body mutilation. And this book was available for kids to read. On the other side, you see them talking about pronouns and what pronouns are appropriate to be used in the house. And again, this falls right into gender ideology and pushing that narrative, which is so prevalent right now in public schools because of books like this. This is where it gets even darker. So in this section of the book, Maya is talking about fantasizing what oral sex would be if she had a penis. And you can see the narration here. This is the visual I'd been picturing, but I can't feel anything. This was much hotter when it was only in my imagination. And then it goes on to be even more explicit after that. So in this lovely section of the book, they're talking about being asexual and different types of sexualities. Now again, this book is being published and being read by children in public schools, having conversations that I'm sure they probably haven't even had with their parents, coming home wondering, what is asexual, Dad? What's that? And now you got to have that conversation because your kids had access to books with sexually explicit conversations. It's just mind-blowing to me. And the fact that we're discussing why it's inappropriate and having to defend that. On the right side, as you can see, you have Maya saying, the more I had to interact with my genitals, the less likely I was to reach the point of any satisfaction. The best fantasy was one that didn't require any physical touch at all. And then you see the daydream of, it looks like two men touching each other. Like, I mean, really? Do I even need to go on? In this last slide, she's talking about the trauma of having to get her period or her menstrual cycle and what that experience was like. And look, I'm sure there are girls that can relate to this, right? But again, these are conversations that should be had with mothers and their daughters, not the public school system. Like, why this is even available to anybody's eyes in school without parental discretion is just mind-blowing to me. It's mind-blowing, and I can't believe that this imagery was accessible to children. I definitely would advise you to do your own research, go online and look at excerpts from this book and what she says and the content of the book to really get an understanding of why parents have a problem with the book. I also want to address Joy Reid making the comment about, oh, well, parents are allowed to just get certain sections of the book and then read it, or they're allowed to look at keywords and then look at paragraphs of those keywords, and it's out of context, and it's not fair to do that. Tell me, if we're talking about things like dildo, strap-on, anal sex, please tell me, in the context of a child and a public school, how that can be seen as out of context if it's inside a children's book. Tell me in what universe would those topics and those words be okay in context for a child? I'm talking about 10, 11, 12, sometimes even younger. Tell me in what context would those words, those keywords be okay? Because Joy Reid is trying to make the argument that, oh, they're just reading it out of context. Yes, the word strap-on was in the children's book, but it's out of context. The word strap-on should not be in a children's book, and that is the point. That's the point. That goes over her head. Let's keep watching.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book,
A brain?
like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your
What a
expertise?
tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family members. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm
Sure.
going to answer
Please
for
do.
you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school?
Boom.
That's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a
Yes.
minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No,
Wait,
We're
hold
talking
on.
about
No.
public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
Well, who's the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Aren't Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just
the
gave me
name?
very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
It's the gentleman-
Hold on.
the main-
Who's the main character in the book?
The main character is the author.
What's his name?
George, I believe, is his first
Because
name.
you're giving me very specific information that is
You're
presenting
asking me to
yourself as an
remember the
expert.
name of an author.
You
the
just
name of the
remembered
author
very
doesn't
specific things.
Joy.
Here's my
We're
question.
talking about
Here's my
strap.
question.
You didn't answer my question.
No. I'm going to answer your
Great.
question.
I would love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm interviewing you, and you're not interviewing me. So let's just make sure it's a conversation.
Okay, great.
So what I'm saying to you is that as you are not an expert in this book,
I don't have to
hold
be an
on.
expert to
No,
know that
hold on a
dildos
second.
aren't
One
appropriate.
moment.
Hello.
This book is a full context story, as you said, of the author's experience. Why is it your right or a Moms for Liberty activist's right to say that a parent
She's so stupid.
wants their child to have access to this book, which gives a personal experience of this author, why doesn't a liberal parent, for instance, or a parent of an LGBTQ kid, why don't they have a right for their child to just have access to this book? Why is it your right to say they can't?
Okay, before she answers, I gotta go in because I just have to address this. Like, Lord, give me the patience. Give me the patience, Lord. Thank you. Okay, so the fact that she keeps asking her, what makes you an expert on this topic? What makes you an expert to decide what's appropriate and what's not appropriate? Are you freaking kidding me right now? So you're telling me that a parent of a child cannot determine what is appropriate for their child because they're not a psychiatrist, they're not a family therapist, they're not a professional, so therefore as a parent, you can't really dictate what your child gets to see and not see because you aren't a expert. That's literally what she's saying. Like she said, you do not need to be an expert to use your brain cells to know that topics like dildo and strap-on and anal sex are not appropriate for children. There you go. There's your expertise. And I like how Joy Reid tried, desperately so, to have a gotcha moment with this woman by asking her, so who's the main character? And then she answers and says the main character is the author. I believe his name is George. And she's like, oh, okay, well, I'm asking because you're saying you're an expert of the book, but have you read the book? And it's like, she just told you who the main character was. So your point didn't really land because you were hoping that she wouldn't know who the main character was. So you can say, aha, you didn't even read the book. And clearly, you don't need to read the book from front end to back end to know that it's inappropriate. All you need to do is look at excerpts from the book. And if I see an excerpt of a book that has something that is inappropriate for a children's eyes, I don't need to read the rest of the book to know this book is not appropriate. Done. And I'm not saying that the author doesn't have a right to address his issues as a child and talk about his discovery and talk about his experience and his trauma. That's fine. Do that. Nobody's arguing against that. The argument, though, is it age appropriate for children to be reading such topics? Nobody's saying his journey, his writing, his illustration, his experience shouldn't be read. The argument is who should be reading it and when is it appropriate to be reading these types of books? Those questions should be asked. And the fact that Joy Reid is trying to make it seem as though simply asking the question is a problem. She's fighting for parental rights. She's fighting for the rights of parents to be able to decide what is appropriate for their kids in a public school setting. That's it. You want to buy the book on your own time? Buy it on your own time. Go to Amazon, go to Barnes & Nobles, I'm sure it's there, and buy the book and read it if you want to read it. But a kid should not have access to a book with adult-themed explicit material. End of story. That's where it starts, and that's where it ends. And the fact that that simple logic can't penetrate this woman's mind, Joy Reid, the fact that she's trying to make this a leftist versus conservative, Republican versus Democrat. She brings up, why can't a liberal parent? This ain't about liberal parents. Because I'm sure that there are liberal parents out there who agree with this woman, who do not want their kids having access to topics in books that they are not ready for, regardless if you are a liberal or a conservative. It's called having a brain. That's all the expertise you need. Eyes, ears, and common sense. All right, let's keep watching this train wreck.
Again, we're talking about incest, rape, and pedophilia.
And
Joy,
each parent, each parent has to decide what is appropriate for their child to read. So I want you to answer. I'm going to ask you one more time. Right. What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story? Why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means that they have either been raped by a family member, they've experienced
and your proof of that is what?
You just said that
What's
if a child feels seen by this story.
Yep.
You're now making assumptions about
Joy, but if a child...
What?
A lot better than put a book on a library
You're literally
shelf.
creating a story behind a child that you don't know. Let me show you a form.
Is she out of her damn mind? Is she literally out of her mind right now? She literally just said a second ago, if a child feels seen by this story, they should have access to the book, right? This story. Now, what is this story about? As she stated, it's about incest. It's about rape. It's about abuse. So her response is, if a child feels seen by that type of story, then there's a bigger issue to be had. There's a bigger discussion to be had because clearly that child is being abused. Let's talk about that. Forget about the book. Let's talk about why a child, an innocent child, feels seen by a story like that. And the fact that Joy Reid walked into that landmine, got blown up, and I was trying to reverse it and say, you're making things up, you're exaggerating things, you're creating a story. No. You are creating the story because you're trying to defend why an explicit book with adult material should be seen by children's eyes by stating it could be their story. They could feel seen by that story. And then when she pushes back and says, using her common sense and says, if you feel seen by a story about incest and rape, there's a bigger discussion to be had about that poor child. You now want to backtrack and state that she is over exaggerating or she's creating stories or she's trying to divert the conversation. No, she's addressing what you said, you moron. You said it, and now you realize you said it, and now you're backtracking, doing the moonwalk, trying to get out of that discussion and trying to flip it on her as if she is just being outrageous with her theories. No, she's addressing what you just said. You said it, it came out of your mouth, and now you can't back it up. Oh my God, I feel like I'm losing brain cells watching this interview. I really do. I feel like I am slowly becoming dumber and dumber, aka a formal liberal. Let's keep watching.
This is a form that can be obtained in Broward County, Florida. Okay. I'm going to show it to the audience, and then I'm going to show it to you. Okay. This is called the opt. Yeah, please. I'm going to hand it to you. Thank you so much. It's called the opt-out form.
Okay.
An opt-out form would allow any parent, because you said you are in favor of parental rights.
I am.
It would allow any parent to opt out of their child being able to take books out of the library without their parents' permission.
Okay.
So that Moms for Liberty, why not advocate that every school in America have an opt-out form so that a parent who doesn't want their child to access a book like All Boys Aren't Blue,
right,
that they can make that choice? Because then each parent, including a liberal parent, a black parent, a parent who wants their child to read a book about African-American history, then they get their rights.
We want children to read books about
Why not just opt
exactly. Cut the crap.
Tell other parents what they can and cannot.
First of all, I think what you're talking about here is a wonderful step in the right direction. We should be having conversations about this. This is about local control. A lot of these decisions are made at the local school board level, and that's where these decisions should be made. And there should be vibrant conversations about what's happening in our public schools and what kids have access to. Joy, however, maybe we could just put all the books with all the graphic sexual content, the dildos, the rape, the incest.
I'm sorry.
I'm
so sorry.
Let's do a back room. Let's put a curtain up in the library like they used to do.
One moment.
Remember when we were little and you would go to the video store?
The books that Moms for Liberty.
The books that Moms for Liberty. With pornography.
I know that I've seen.
We could just do that in the public library.
I have seen tapes of what Moms for Liberty does, and you all go into school board meetings and you read graphic stuff.
This is a disingenuous conversation.
No, it's not.
America used to understand that there was something called age-appropriate content.
Right, and here's my question again.
On movies.
Again.
Hello.
Ruby Bridges Goes to School is on the list.
This woman she's insufferable. She is insufferable to listen to, but I'm getting through it for you guys because I love you. So let's get through this together. But oh my God. Okay, the opt-out form. I agree with it. Great idea. In fact, opt-out forms have always been a thing. When I was a kid in school, I remember having forms like that, right? Where you would have to get parental consent in order to watch a certain film, or parental consent to go on a certain trip at a certain field because it may be appropriate or inappropriate, whatever it may be, right? That's always been a thing. But what we're talking about is a bigger conversation, right? Like pornography shouldn't even be an option. How about that?
Catch me outside. How about that?
How about we not have books that show graphic images of people's anatomies?
How about that?
There shouldn't be an opt-out form if you want to read a book at age 10 about rape. How about we don't have those books available to children? Why is that so hard to comprehend? Like, why is that even on the table? Why is that even an option? And the fact that Joy Reid can't concede to that, and she's like, I've seen what you guys do. I've seen what you guys do. So in other words, you already have a preconceived perception of this woman and her organization, and you're there not to have a real genuine conversation. You're there to have a gotcha moment. You're there to create a viral moment for yourself. You're not there to actually listen to what she has to say. You're not there to actually discuss this topic at hand. You're there to try and embarrass her. And the irony of it all is that you've only embarrassed yourself. And you are a shining example of why the public school system is the way that it is and why it is trash. Why it's trash? Because people like Joy Reid and that mindset are running the school systems, endangering your kids with this crazy nonsense, with this ideology. We got about 4 more minutes left of this video. Let's see if I can get through it without screaming.
Let me ask about the people who are making the decision for their parents, because you have not answered yet why a liberal parent or an African-American parent
We
can't
have
say
parents who are Democrats who are members of our organization.
But you're still trying to make decisions for all the kids. Here are some of the parents that are filing, or some of your advocates. Bridget Ziegler, the Moms for Liberty co-founder, the wife of the recently ousted Florida Republican Party chairman, Christian Ziegler, who allegedly was involved in threesomes, same-sex threesomes. Mrs. Ziegler was removed from the school board at which she was a leader. You've had
She wasn't removed from the school board.
Carrie Blair in Tennessee, who was arrested for property theft charges after allegedly stealing from Target, skip scanning in Target. Why should those 3 people get to make decisions about what other children should be able to read?
Okay. So let me get this straight. So people with a past cannot advocate for their children. So she brings up a woman that had a threesome. She brings up a woman who was arrested for theft at Target years ago. So I guess those women do not get the right to advocate for their kids and what the public school system is teaching their kids within these books because they have a history and they're not perfect. Tell me, in what universe does that make sense? What I see here is Joy Reid once again diverting the conversation from the context of the actual books and talking about other things, throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks because her argument is completely faltered and weak. That's what's happening here. I can't even continue to watch this video, you guys, because my brain is hurting. My brain is hurting. The video goes on for maybe about a minute or two. It's the same exchange. Nothing really happens. Nothing really changes. Joy Reid continues to be a buffoon. And we end up where we end up. So I'm going to just end the video here before I pull my hair out. Let me know in the comments down below where you stand on this issue. Are you on the side of Joy Reid? God, I hope not. Or are you on the side of Tiffany Justice, who is advocating for children not being exposed to adult content in their books? Not rocket science. If you enjoy my content, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit my notification bell so you know when I post a brand new video. I'm also available on all social media platforms under CurlyBoyChuck. I'll see you there. Until next time, peace.